Hey, Veach, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, let me just turn my volume up low. Yeah. You guys good?
We're good. We got you. We can see you. We're ready to go.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for hopping on this Zoom call. We've had a exciting last few weeks of camp. As always, I'd like to start off by thanking my personnel staff and the coaching staff for all the hard work. We had a lot of work to do this off season, starting with the free agency period into the draft and getting to St. Joe. We've had a lot of new players on the roster, young players, and again, can't thank them enough for all the hard work that they've done for this organization in the last few months. And want to thank the players. We had a great camp, great few weeks at St. Joe. In fact, Coach and I were talking a few days ago about the level of focus and dedication from this group. So it was certainly an outstanding group to work with. Congratulations to all the guys that made our active roster and our practice squad. And certainly want to thank the guys that are pursuing other interests at different places. Again, the group as a whole was one of the better groups that we've had the privilege to work with. So with that, I'll open it up and take some questions.
Let's go first to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett, how you doing?
Good, Adam. How are you?
Good, thanks. Brett, I'll have second questions. My first one, Brett, is just wondering if you can explain the decision to keep three quarterbacks, where the need is there. And Brett, again, I'll have a second question.
Yeah, we always try to strive to keep the best players on the team, and we've been very fortunate to have Chad Henne here the last few years, and he's been outstanding to have both on the field and in the classroom. And last year bringing Shane in here, we just continue to see the growth and development in him, and we like that room. There's a great chemistry, with all three of those guys. And I think at the end of the day, we always tell the guys that once we get them here, we like to put the decision in their hands. And Shane was one of those guys that we felt played well and earned a spot in this roster.
Okay. You feel like he's capable of helping you guys win a game now if you needed him to play, or where do you feel like he is on that developmental timeline?
Yeah, we do. I think just in general for the guys that we end up keeping on that 53, I think we have the same mindset with all those guys that, if they're going to be up and active, they're going to be ready to help us out. And again, I mean, we've been through this both ways, and we've gotten lucky some years where everyone at that position stayed healthy, and we've also had to use more than just one guy the last few years. So there's no position as important as that position. So when you have a guy that like Shane come in here and do the things that he has, especially at that position, it's something we feel confident in.
Let's go next to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Hello, Brett. Thanks for taking the time as always.
Hey, Nate.
I have two questions as well. My first is, you obviously made the move before the draft with the trade to get more draft picks. I'm just interested in learning what you think about this group of rookies. 9 of the 10 make the initial roster, and is that something that somewhat surprised you guys, perhaps before camp started, and as you guys progressed to this decision? And Brett, I'll have another.
I think the thing that surprised us the most with this group is, and Steve may have mentioned this a few press conferences ago, is how quickly they've been able to catch up to speed. And usually when you bring in a group of guys, and we've had a big group this year, but usually when you bring in a rookie class, they're all on a little bit of a different timeline in regards to can they get up to speed and can they be in a position to help this team out at what point. Well, a few weeks into the season, halfway point. I think the one surprising thing is the group as a whole, I think, has shown that they've been able to come in here and the game isn't too big for them, but they fit athletically, skill set wise, and then B, that the coaches have shown their ability to put their trust in them and to work them in. I think you guys have seen a lot of these young guys working in, not just playing time wise, but working in there with the first group, second group, and they're getting caught up to speed quickly. So I think it's surprising to have, I guess, such a big class and have majority, if not all of them, kind of show that they're ready to go. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done with these guys. And I mean, Steve and EB and Coach Reed would be the first ones to say that we like where we're at right now, but to get to where we need to be, there's still a lot of work ahead of us.
And I wanted to ask you specifically about, you thought that there might be, a potential talented running back sort of late in the draft. You guys made the decision to select Isaiah Pacheco. You liked him initially. Just what has he shown to give you confidence that that he's got to fit a role in this offense as a 7th-round pick?
Well, as you guys know, I mean, we're certainly a pass-heavy offense. So I think when these young guys come in here, they certainly have to have the running skill set. But I think the ability to kind of pick up pass protections and have reliable hands out of the backfield is certainly something that those guys have to show and demonstrate on a consistent basis. And he's been one of those guys, again, with all these rookies to come in here and show that, yeah, listen, they're going to know how to run the ball when given the opportunity. But the blitz pickups, the protection checks, and then just being consistent with their hands out of the backfield is something that I think from day one Isaiah has shown. And we're excited, like all these young guys, we're excited where he is now, and we think he has a great future ahead of him.
Let's go next to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Brett, how's it going?
Good, Sam. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. And Brett, I'll have a couple. Brett, just real quick, first, if you could speak to the decision to keep 5 wide receivers, and was that something you guys toggled with?
Yeah, we went back and forth. A couple. I think sometimes there is that game within the game, so you're just knowing how waiver wires work and knowing the trends of claims, and knowing where we've been exposed over the years. I think like defensive end is one position that it seems for some reason we always accumulate injuries at that position, and we're always a little short at that defensive end position. We have a couple older veteran guys at that position as well, and we thought that there would be a good chance to go heavier on that and have the opportunity to come back and have these guys like Doris ready to go and put them on the practice squad. So it's never easy, and you kind of go back and forth, and you're trying to work the system to get all these players. And we had a lot of good guys that we cut that we thought were 53-man caliber roster players, and a little bit of it is just calculating how the league works as a whole. And we're able to make these roster decisions, and then, as you mentioned, Sam, sign some of these guys right back to the practice squad. And as I mentioned and Doris is one of them, we had a good conversation. I mean, it'll just be a matter of time before we're going to need him, and he'll be on the team at some point in such a long season. So I think it worked out in that regard.
And secondly, you guys made quantity-wise quite a bit of changes, especially on defense. I just wondered if there was an aspect of it, now that you've got the initial 53 set, that you look at it and you're eager to see how a specific quality might play out, once September 11th gets here.
Yeah, we certainly want to get younger on defense and just get more athletic and build that depth. And the trade enabled us to attack a lot of those areas. I mean, we'll always be looking for ways to add talent to the offense with Pat Mahomes, but at the same time, we want to complement him in our offense with an athletic defense that can that has speed to match up with all the great offenses that we see throughout our schedule. So I think that was certainly on the forefront of being able to add depth, add athleticism, and add speed. And I think, again, it's early and we have a long way to go. It's a long season. It's a tough schedule, but I think the defense has done a great job. And I think the coaching staff has done a great job getting all these new parts in here. So many rookies with George and Brian Cook, and then bringing Reed in and McDuffie and some of these younger corners that have made our active roster. I think all these guys have done a great job. And again, I think a lot of that credit goes to the coaching staff for being able to get these guys up and running quickly.
Let's go next to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Brett, I have a quick housekeeping thing after this, but my question's about Ronald Jones, Brett, and thank you for doing this. It seemed like he was with the third team. Andy said he had a late push. Just how much was his last game a factor in keeping him, and what just went into, all right, we're going to keep it a 4 running back room? Yeah,
I think, well, that's a good question. I certainly think that last game was important for him. As you guys know, we have long training camp days, and coaches does an amazing job of getting the most out of that time at St. Joe's. We are a pass heavy team, so a lot of the St. Joe's is, as you guys know, dedicated to 7-on-7s, and sometimes it feels like we're out there for hours on hours just doing on 7-on-7, but it's all about the pass game and refining the quarterback. And every now and then, those days kind of blend together. I think that last preseason game was a great reminder of how valuable Ronald Jones can be, and I think we can all agree that he ran with a lot of authority in between the tackles, and we saw flashes of that at training camp. Again, you're not in that live, we do the 9-on-7 drills, but some of the run game live stuff, it's a little bit tapered back to some degree. And I think Thursday was a good reminder of how important that role is within our offense. And I certainly think that he took advantage of that. And so when he got his number called, I think there was a sense of urgency that he ran with. And I think it's a good springboard for him to continue to work and be a valuable asset for us.
And then the other quick thing was just fair to think that Blake Bell will go to injured reserve, and you guys think they're optimistic that he can be back at some point this year?
Yeah, we're hoping so. I think Coach mentioned a few weeks ago that, he might be a little bit here, and we'll work through that the next couple of days. But we're certainly optimistic that Blake will be back on the roster.
Let's go next to Seren Petro. Go ahead, Seren.
And Brad, I'll have a follow-up as well. Can you tell us about what you saw in Darian Kennard in camp, and was he the player you saw at Kentucky, and is he a tackle? I know you've got 3 tackles that are, that are kept on the as far as on the bench. Does he fit in at guard? Is that something you'd work him at?
Yeah, all of our guys, I think the one thing that we do a good job in when we get guys, whether it be through the free agency process or in the draft process, we put a high priority on their flex, their position flex, and a lot of these guys are interchangeable. I think when we brought Andrew Wiley here, he only played guard most of his career. Now he's playing tackle, so a lot of these guys have flex. I think with Darian, he had a really good finish to this camp. The last week and a half was good. He did, I would say, of the rookies, it was a little bit more of a change for him. I think he had the chance to play at Kentucky, and that was a heavy run-oriented offense. And I think coming into this league now, you're at, the talent level is a lot different in regards to what you're seeing off the edge. Now, I know we played in the SEC, so that was a good thing, but I think the talent change from the NFL and then going to a pass-heavy offense was a little bit of a different deal for him. I think it took him a little while to get his feet wet, but I think we start to see him turn the corner there toward the end of the season. And he's, again, one of those guys that, when you start to see it and, you invest in draft pick, you want to see this thing through. And we certainly think that he has a lot of upside. And as you mentioned, Seren, I think there's upside at both guard and tackle.
All right. And then the names that are out there as far as your practice squad signings that are getting done, have a lot of guys that you had in camp. I go back long enough that I remember that a lot of times the practice squad would it's almost like, let's get a fresh bunch in here and get a look at it. Now it seems like the league is kind of settled into it. You're bringing back guys that were part of that initial 80. Is that a league-wide thing? Is that a philosophy that I'm obviously not following the other teams as closely as I am yours? Is that a Chiefs philosophy, or do you think that's just where the league is trended overall?
My gut would tell me it's a little bit more of a trend thing. I mean, there's I think we have 14 guys signed up, and we'll have a chance to add some new players. I think that there were some players that we have reached out to that the guys that we didn't get, I think, are staying with their team. So I think it's probably it probably does lean toward those guys staying. I think there's a level of comfort. I also think that you'll see different waves. I think early on, I think with the first game being right around the corner, and if something did happen to a player, these guys are ready to go right away. And then you'll have another wave, and you'll see this over the wire throughout the year. You'll have big pockets of workouts now when the dust settles and guys are out there and guys become available. Teams will start bringing in 2, 3, 4 players out of position and work them out and get even more extensive time with them, and then kind of bleed them into the practice squad. And then I think toward the end of the year, you'll start to see more of it'll never be 50-50 in regards to players are with you and players that you brought in, but you'll start to see the numbers start to shade a little bit more on some new blood coming in as we get toward the middle end of the season.
Looks like we've got 4 more. Let's go next to Dave Scretta. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Brett, thanks for hopping on. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think you went from maybe like one of the top 10 oldest teams to one of the top 10 youngest teams, and that's a pretty huge swing for one off season. Was there a point where you realized last season, whether it was the Cincinnati game in the second half or any other point, where you knew you had to get younger, basically roster wide?
I think it's one of those things. I think it's at the forefront of every GM. I think depth and youth is something that, whether you're a team that has, I mean, obviously if you have an older roster, it's on your mind, but even teams that have a younger roster, I think, you're always a few injuries away from having to bring in vets, or, I mean, you're always a few good seasons from players signing somewhere else. And I think the ability to just have young talent to grow and develop is at the forefront of every GM. And we were no different. I think that in looking at our season and getting a chance to kind of review how we can get better, I think the defense was right at the forefront of just, again, adding youth and talent and athleticism. And it was a priority, but I think every year it's kind of that same mindset of just getting younger and faster and more athletic.
Go next to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Brett, thanks as always for your time.
Sure.
You had a big overhaul, obviously, on the special teams as far as losing a lot of multi-phase guys from last year. How do you and Dave Tope feel about how that all shook out, and how did special teams play into some of those final decisions, especially maybe with like a Chris Lamons and some of those guys at the last spots at each position?
Yeah, Matt, and as you guys know, that I mean, we're in constant communication with both sides of the football, and that includes that third element with special teams. And so when we get to these final positions, and whether you talk about the final receiver spot, final corner spot, final linebacker spot, I think these are guys that we all feel good about. And we did sign Doris to the practice squad. We know that has the ability to come in here and help us on teams. Justin Watson was a guy that had shown the ability to do that in the past at Tampa Bay, and he did a great job in training camp. And then Chris Lamons, he's one of the best gunners out there, and he always finds a way to make a play on kick or punt coverage. So that's it's a huge priority on what we do, and I think this year's team is no different. And I think if you look at the final few guys that made our roster, all those guys have one similar quality, and that's that they're going to be able to come in and help us out in that phase of the game.
Last two, we'll go Todd and then Harold. Go ahead, Todd.
Hey, bro, appreciate you doing this. I was curious, with respect to your roster construction, how transformative has the new practice squad rule allowing you to stash veterans like a Danny Shelton or a Doris Fountain been when you're kind of putting that initial 53 man together?
It's been a huge benefit, I think, throughout the league. Having both number wise, I remember back in the day we used to have 8 or 10, and now having, it's funny because every year you're always you feel like you're 1 or 2 short. So when we had 8, we just felt like if we had 10 it'd be enough. And now here we have 16, and we just felt like if we had 18 it'd be enough. But I think it helps in many ways. A lot of times you have these young guys that you want to continue to grow and develop, but if you have an injury early on in the season, you may have to make a roster move. And then once these guys get put on the active roster, back in the day, as you remember, they used to be exposed to the waiver wire. And then, it's different when a team poaches a player. It's a 3-week commitment, and that's tough to do if you don't know the player, he doesn't know the scheme. But back in the day when that happened, I mean, you'd have to put them on the waiver wire, and then they can just pick them up and not be committed for 3 weeks. So it's a lot easier to claim a guy. Now you can elevate guys, and they're exposed for 1 day, but for the most part, I mean, it allows you better insurance to protect those young players, while at the same time having additional space allows you to utilize older players in a pinch if you need. And I think it's just a good blend. I think it helps teams stay healthier, and I think it allows players who are hurt to do the rehab the right way and to rush to get back on the field to protect some players that might get exposed to waivers. So I think from an injury protection standpoint and from a youth development standpoint, it's been a blessing to have not just 16 players, but the ability to elevate these players twice throughout the season.
We'll go last to Harold Kuntz. Go ahead, Harold.
Hey, Brett, hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Quick linebacker question with Darius Harris and then Jermaine Carter, just the decision that went into that. And then also with all those guys that were kind of at the end, as you said, was this kind of a tougher decision than years past with some of those last guys in because of the depth that you did have during training camp and preseason?
Yeah, well, the first with Darius, I think he was the guy similar to what Pete asked about Rojo. He's the guy that went out there and earned it. And I think that last game, he did a great job. Over the last few years, he's really developed as a guy that we feel strongly in regards to backup Mike position. Had the green dot the last few preseason games, and I think from where he started and bouncing around different linebacker positions to kind of growing into the guy that can handle some Mike roles and the roles and responsibilities of that position. I think he's demonstrated that, and I think again, like Ronald, when he had that opportunity presented to himself that last preseason game, he just took it and ran with it. So certainly we were excited about that development. And then your second question, Harold, can you just go over that second question again?
Yeah, just with the last spots on that roster, especially with Shane and everything, was it kind of tougher in years past, just to kind of instrumenting all the navigating the whole put 3 quarterbacks and everything in those spots?
Yeah, every year I feel like it's tough because you get into a scenario where you're trying to figure out how you can kind of get the best of both worlds. I guess, you're always looking at teams and looking at what they need, and you're looking at the trends of these waiver wires, and so you're trying to sit there and calculate without getting too cute, because at the end of the day, you just want to keep the best 53. But there is an element of working the waiver wire system the right way, where the likelihood of guys being available to sign the practice squad as, the likelihood of guys getting claimed on the waiver wire. So it's difficult because you always have to hold your breath when you expose guys to the waiver wire. But I think in this case for this year, I think some of the guys that we were looking and having hard debates on, I think we're able to get those guys back on the practice squad. So every year it's difficult, and some years it works out and some years it didn't. And I think the way it worked out this year, I think we feel very fortunate and lucky, and I think we're heading into the season in the right direction.
Brett, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
You bet, guys. Thanks.